since like my mid-30s, you know, like always feeling tired every day, and you know, like especially around the 2 weeks or 10 days before you're getting your period, you feel like, as much as I didn't want to snap, I didn't want to be angry, you feel like it's just out of control, and you know, and struggling with sleeping, and you know, if someday you feel kind of like emotional, sad, like, and then later on, as after my cancer, so I just wanna gain some knowledge for myself, for my audience, and especially a lot of my friends going through this. Maybe for women, we can talk about going through perimenopause first. Like, what do you recommend for women that's going through perimenopause? What should they take care of their nutrition daily, and in terms of sleep and stress? And also, if you can share for people that are going through menopause.
So when I was doing my master's program, my main focus was female hormones. So I did like a very big deep dive on all of this. I was primarily focusing on PCOS and kind of transitioned into perimenopause and post-menopause. So one thing I want to clarify is that when we say menopause, menopause is one day on the calendar. That is the day that it has been 1 year since you last had a period. So everything leading up to that is perimenopause, and then we've got postmenopause. Typically it's between, you know, age like 40 and 48 that we start to see perimenopausal symptoms. And the first thing I want to say is maybe stay off of social media when you start this phase of your life, because I feel like they are preying on women, and it is really wild.
When people facing challenges, especially, you know, with metabolic disorder and autoimmunity, chronic inflammations, what is the first thing that you help them to overcome?
But my number one starting place is always that back to basics of like, are we getting adequate nutrients? Are we getting adequate fiber? Are we getting adequate protein? And I think that applies to everyone. So I would say that you should eat the rainbow, get enough protein, get enough fiber, surround yourself with people that make you want to be a better person, find something to believe in, get enough sleep, and move your body. Like, often people would say to me, life is not a race, Laura. It's not a race. Like, relax.
Hello, you all beautiful soul. Welcome back to the Wisdom Inside Out podcast. Thank you. So just moving to the next questions, where I feel like a lot of women have impacted this, and I didn't know that I was impacted by this since like my mid-30s, you know, like always feeling tired every day, and you know, like especially around the 2 weeks or 10 days before you're getting your period, you feel like, as much as I didn't want to snap, I didn't want to be angry, you feel like it's just out of control, and you know, and struggling with sleeping, and you know, if someday you feel kind of like emotional, sad, like, and then later on, as after my cancer, as I read more into health and stuff like that, I was like, oh, I actually gone through perimenopause, and now I'm like in my closing to my mid-40s. So I just want to prepare, because it's gonna get into menopause and stuff like that. And I've seen some women, you know, they share how bad it is to them. They've gone through depression, and some women like actually commit suicide on that. So I just want to gain some knowledge for myself, for my audience, and especially a lot of my friends going through this. Like, what is, maybe for women, we can talk about going through perimenopause first. Like, what do you recommend for women that's going through perimenopause, what should they take care of their nutrition daily and in terms of sleep and stress? And also if you can share for people that are going through menopause, like when they stop getting their periods, they're very struggling with their sleeping, their hot flushes, and emotional unstable and stuff like that. If you can help me to share some research, some insight, and especially what can we apply into our daily life to improve that.
Sure. Okay. So when I was doing my master's program, my main focus was female hormones. So I did like a very big deep dive on all of this. I was primarily focusing on PCOS and kind of transitioned into perimenopause and post-menopause. So one thing I want to clarify is that when we say menopause is one day on the calendar. That is the day that it has been 1 year since you last had a period. So everything leading up to that is perimenopause, and then we've got postmenopause. And this can start it's a little bit less likely to happen for a woman in her 30s, but it can. Typically it's between, age like 40 and 48 that we start to see perimenopausal symptoms. And the first thing I want to say is maybe stay off of social media when you start this phase of your life, because I feel like they are preying on women, and it is really wild. And I think that it's getting way overcomplicated, and we can simplify it. Now, that being said, when I did a deep dive on perimenopause, I kind of expected it to be like the way that society looks at PMS. I think that sometimes it's used as a crutch and it's like overstated, but for sure, when I look at perimenopause and what is happening to your hormones, it's very real. It's not being used as a crutch. It's really a really wild ride to see like how the hormones are just up and down, up and down, up and down. So, and one thing I also want to say is that if you are a woman in your late 30s, early 40s, and you're experiencing what is classic perimenopausal symptoms, do not waste your money on getting hormone tests. We already know that it's a blip in time. If you're in that age range and you're experiencing those symptoms, let's just treat it as such. For women that are really struggling, don't be afraid to ask your doctor about hormone replacement therapy. Even in functional medicine, where we're food first, we acknowledge that this can be a major game changer for a lot of women and make things really, really tolerable. I would encourage people to try without HRT first, but if they are experiencing a lot of symptoms, and especially if you're early on, that's the best time to start those types of medications. So you would need to see a doctor for those prescriptions. But in terms of nutrition, there are foods that can be really beneficial for female hormones, not to the extent that any pharmaceutical drugs would be, but we can support your estrogen metabolism, both detoxifying it, because once we've used the estrogen that we need, we want to get rid of the less beneficial forms of it through our liver. But then we also want to just support its metabolism as it's doing its job. So the ways that we can do that is with phytoestrogens. So there's lots of foods that are going to be sources of this, including cruciferous vegetables. So that would include broccoli, cauliflower, kale, arugula, bok choy, red and green cabbage. Those are great foods. Brussels sprouts is another one. I tell my perimenopausal and postmenopausal women to try to incorporate 2 to 3 cups per day. And this is actually really easy because even if you do a salad, can you incorporate cabbage in your salad? It's easy to eat a cup of cabbage there, or arugula or the kale. Some of those foods hide really well in smoothies and shakes, which would be another way to get those in. I also tell people to do 2 to 4 tablespoons of ground flaxseed per day. And that can get higher in calories, but I think that most of the research, especially for hot flashes, there was I saw better results with ground flaxseed in the research that I've read versus all these different supplements. I don't think many of the supplements really move the needle very much for most women. Another one would be to incorporate soy products, which it gets a bad rap. I have no idea where that comes from, but there's a mountain of evidence showing that soy is actually going to help prevent breast cancer, and especially the reoccurrence of breast cancer. So that's one thing I would say, like, hey, like, let's make sure that you're getting enough protein. So let's add in a protein shake. Let's put soy milk in that protein shake, and let's put 2 to 4 tablespoons of ground flaxseed, depending on how bad your hot flashes are or how many calories you have to afford. That's a great method. And then what else is really special about the cruciferous vegetables is they have compounds that will help improve your detoxification processes in your liver. So not only do some of them have phytoestrogens, but we also can help improve the detoxification pathways to help clear hormones that we no longer need. So those are like my first like go-tos. In terms of protein, in conjunction with resistance training, I like to see 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. So taking your weight and multiplying it by 1.6 to be in kilograms, to be the lower end, and then by 2.2, the higher end. For anybody who's listening that is in the US, it'd be 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. And that's been just shown to be the best way to support weight loss, muscle protein synthesis, to prevent sarcopenia. And I think all of those things are super important, because that's, as anyone ages, whether it's a man or a woman, we want to make sure that we're maintaining our lean body mass.
That's beautiful. And is there any fasting you recommend for women that going through perimenopause or going through menopause?
Okay, that's a great question. And there is conflicting information on this. So I've closely followed Dr. Stacy Sims for many years, and she's a little bit controversial on social media these days. But her whole thing has been like, hey, we don't study women enough, and that's been her focus is exercise physiology for women. And she's a PhD as well. And I think that, like, so looking at her research, her conclusion is that the benefits of fasting that we see in men and that we see in rats, because that's where most of the research is done, and in diabetics and people who are obese, are not the same effects that we are going to see in women, normal weight exercising women. So her conclusion, and a lot of it is based on a lot of mechanistic data versus human studies, because it's hard to study women because our hormones are all over the place, and they just don't prioritize it in the scientific literature. It seems like from her body of research that she cites, I would say maybe that's probably not the best idea for women to fast. Now, that being said, I know a lot of women who have followed the protocol in the book Fast Like a Girl, and she promotes fasting, and that I've seen people have really great results with that. So I think that it's probably based on the individual, and probably not everyone is responding in the exact same way to fasting. But keeping in mind that women do tend to have a stronger stress response than men in terms of our cortisol. So exercise is a stress, fasting is a stress. So maybe combining the two might not be the best idea, but it might depend on the individual. So like if you're rolling out of bed and you're going to go work out, like maybe it doesn't feel good to have any kind of meal. I usually tend to tell people like, hey, why don't you just try a tangerine, a half a banana, something, and see how you feel, because also you're going to be able to push harder for those workouts. And so it's like the performance aspect. And because when it comes down to it, and at the end of the day, it's not going to be like in terms of weight loss, since that's typically what women are concerned about in peri and post-menopause. Doing the fasting versus just eating a lower calorie diet, there's no difference when they've studied the two side by side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I used to fast a lot before. It made me feel good, but I feel like it's not make me feeling good during the time when I have my cycle. So, and I feel like the exercise also feel different as well. Like, because usually I used to exercise without eating, like skip my breakfast, you know, my first meal is like my lunch and dinner. So, but then now I read some article which they said for women, like before we exercise, they recommended to have some food into, you know, so you have something to burn instead of and I feel it's better for me, even though I'm not used to having breakfast, but just having one banana or protein shake and exercise, I feel I have a better response, like in terms of not fully exhausted, or you feel like you have more energy with I have some food in the exercise. And yeah, so that's why, because fasting is also for me, it's helped to like kind of, because when I go through chemo, a lot of people say it's so easy to put on weight and stuff like that. And that's why I pick up fasting, because the doctor said it's good to maintain the same weight throughout the whole 1 year of chemo. And I managed to maintain my weight just by fasting, skipping my breakfast. But now I'm going back to my normal eating. It's just that breakfast, I have a very light, like even just one banana or protein shake or something like that. And I feel like it's working fine for me. So I just want to know, like for people that's going through perimenopause or menopause with stress, because for me, I still feel it, even though I meditate a lot. Like for me, I find that meditation have helped me a lot. Maybe exercise as well, because I feel like I'm in a better clear head after my exercise. But I feel like meditation have helped me a lot in terms of with my stress. Even though I still feel it coming up sometime, but I have ability to regulate it, you know, like observe it without judgment and manage to process in a healthy way compared to before. Is there any other way that you recommend or you found it effective to help women when they're going through like stress, or like, you know, they're feeling overwhelmed? Like I heard a lot of women come and tell me, I didn't want to get snapped, I don't want to scream, but it's just that period of time they just have to explore, they just have to come out. Is there any way to help them to deal with their emotional or stress better during especially the time when they're going through, you know, before they get their period, or a menopause when they finish their period?
So I would say the number one thing would be, because like a lot of us women are mothers as well, and we need to figure out ways to carve out time for ourselves and recognize that that is not a bad thing. We need to be able to, in order to serve our family and our calling, we have to nourish ourselves and we have to be in a good headspace, because if I'm grumpy and complaining and then my kids are fighting, I'm not going to be present for them anyways. So I think it depends on the person. So first of all, like put it in your calendar, like make a list, like here are the things that need to be done for that day, whether you're writing it down or you're putting it in a calendar. Even if you're a stay-at-home mom, just figure out like where does all of this stuff lie. And it can be a 15-minute high intensity interval workout that you find on YouTube. It could be, you know, a short thing that you're doing, strength training. Like for me, exercise is my meditation, and that's where I feel like I can just like escape everything. It might be just 5 minutes of meditation. And I was never a big meditator because that's just, my brain is not that calm. But I recently did a certification to be a sleep science coach. And there was a disproportionate amount of information that I had to learn about meditation compared to anything else that had to do with sleep. And that really like kind of clued me in. And I looked into the research, and what all of these meditation coaches shared was that you don't have to do good meditation. So you can spend 5 minutes that you're just trying to focus on your breathing. And even if you get distracted, bring yourself back in. And even if it's 5 minutes of that, there are huge benefits subjectively for sleep and HRV and heart rate variability and things like that. And so like, to me, like that was really powerful. I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. So like, maybe it looks like that. Maybe it's box breathing. Maybe you find like, there's all these apps now that like just tell you how to breathe and how to like what to think about. I love non-sleep deep rest, NSDR. You can find a 10-minute protocol on YouTube. There's also Yoga Nidra, where it's just like, it's not hokey feeling. It's just like a way to breathe and focus on different parts of your body to just downregulate your nervous system. Gosh, I mean, there's so many different ways that it could be approached. For some people, it needs, like, if they're a little bit more like creative and they want to do something more physical, I'm like, okay, can we do a gratitude journal? Like gratitude journaling 5 minutes every night. And that's a great way to help improve sleep too. And just kind of do a brain dump and just like, here are all the things that are in my head and just getting them out on paper. Like there's something to be said about all of that. I think that you kind of have to experiment and see what works best for you and what's going to work best with your family. But, and then I think that the benefits of exercise on stress are not magnified enough. So I would say like, hey, like, especially if we're women in our 40s, like, you know, our kids are old enough to see what we're doing. And that's also really beneficial. Like I kind of like to schedule my exercise around the time that my kids can see me doing it. And I encourage them, come in the garage with me, like come hang out with me, or let's walk the dog together and teach them those habits. So then you're also like not only benefiting yourself, but you're also benefiting them. So I like to like habit stack, find ways to combine things that are going to be good.
That's beautiful. I love it. And I love how you share about meditation, because with me, I only started meditated the last few years when I go through my cancer, because as I go through chemo, you know, I get a lot of body pain. And this is why I'm so in love with meditation now, because it helped me to scan my body. Like, you know, like I go through each part of my body and kind of show gratitude to every part. Like you get to appreciate your body a lot more when you're going through that scan. Appreciate your organ when you're scanning through, and it helped me with the pain, Dr. Laura. Like, you know, instead of like, my back is pain or my joint is pain. But when you become the observer of it, you're kind of collecting the data, and it's not the pain. For some reason, it makes it feel lighter for me. Like I know my body better. And since I always been a light sleeper, I always struggling with sleeping since I was young. And especially after I had my first kid, I kind of like don't forget about what is having enough sleep. Like I come to accept it, because I 4 or 5 hours sleep every day, because I'm a light sleeper, and once I'm awake I could not go back to sleep. And having a poor habit as well, having your phone next to you and stuff like that, you know, scrolling and stuff. But like meditation have helped me to so easy to fall asleep if I want to just focus on fall asleep, because you know how to focus on things without get caught in the spiral thought or thinking, you know, and kind of learn how to train your brain where to focus and gratitude, and when you wake up you feel better, you have a good sleep. So yeah, I have to say, you know, cancer have helped me with a big like meditation. It kind of like saved my life from going insane, you know, like why is this, like, you know, it's a feeling of I used to be like, if a person that gets stuck in a traffic light, and you like get paranoid why I'm in the traffic light. But now I learned to look at things as if you were on the plane and you observe, you look at the traffic light and you're like, oh, there's a beautiful light. It's like it's the same thing, but when you look at it, it's a totally different feeling when you observe it and gaining more information out of it and know how to deal with it, instead of you feel like you're stuck in it and doesn't know what to do, kind of thing. So I'm glad you're sharing about that. And yeah, and gratitude is a big things that help me end my suffering. You know, a lot of people would think they're not happy with their life, but so many people out there wishing they have your life. You know, I used to look like, you know, because I am Cambodian, and as an immigrant coming to Australia, like, what is my situation? Like, so many people wish they're living a lifestyle of Australian, and so many things that opportunity, family, and all that stuff. So when I start to focus on gratitude, like, I have so much energy, so much love, so much things to handle all my challenging every day. And yeah, so that is like my big things of going through my suffering. Like, people ask, like, how do you do all those, like, and it's all about how you train your brain where to focus. And when you keep focusing on gratitude things in life and learning, you know, having fun in your learning, not having fun, but yeah, and growing. There's so many things that can bring you so much joy and excitement. So just moving to another question. I know I will go dive a bit more on perimenopause or menopause, but I think that's enough for my audience to start to apply on. And if they interested and if they want to hear more from you, and I'm sure I would love to have you back and dive deep onto those, especially for women. So just moving on to the next question, you know, regarding to for your experience, your research, what role does nutrition education play in achieving a long-term health for your clients or for your student that you're teaching, or, you know, that my audience can learn from?
So as I mentioned before, like, even just these like simple concepts of like, why do we need vitamins and minerals, right? And like, almost, again, I think maybe I've had like 2 or 3 people be able to answer that, whether I was in a classroom setting or I was one-on-one coaching or doing a workshop. When people understand why we say things are good for them, it makes it a lot easier to put into practice. And so when I am like providing someone with a strategy, I always give a little bit of the science behind it, meeting them at their level, whether they want me to explain it to them like they're 5 or they want to know all of the biochemistry and physiology. I think that it helps like resonate and make sense of why you should do it. Because if you're just like, yeah, you should drink more water, cool. Why? Like, it's easy to ignore, right? You should eat more vitamins and minerals. Well, if you don't have the context and you don't see why that's so necessary, especially in a world where most people, unfortunately, at least in the Western diets and things, are not doing anywhere close to the right things. Like, where we see like a healthy diet of what we're supposed to be eating on a daily basis as a diet and not a lifestyle. So I think that bringing that context is super, super important. And then also, I mean, just having been an educator for so long, I'm like, well, sorry, you're going to get this side of it. I maybe overshare at times, but I just think that it's important, and I think that it's eye-opening for most people because it's not a normal part of a educational curriculum for the most part. Like, unless you're like seeking out nutrition classes. I'm not sure about what that looks like in Australia. I know in the United States, or at least in California, you know, we used to have a 1 semester health class that everybody took, but it was very surface level information, and we're not really getting to dissect that. And I think it needs to be revisited over time, because like adolescents and kids, you know, historically are gonna eat really poorly usually, and not be very open to it. But I will say that over my years as an educator, like, I'll have former students reach out later and they're like, I totally ignored you, 8 years ago when I took your class, but now I'm thinking about it and I'd love some advice. So like, it's like, maybe we need like mandatory like adult education on too.
Yeah, that's beautiful. People in Australia now, I feel like the younger one nowadays, they're really into their health, they exercise, they're eating enough protein and vegetable. But I feel like maybe they're still struggling with stress, like handling stress and stuff like that. But in terms of eating healthy food, I think what I see is usually old people, they're still stuck with their old pattern. They don't want to waste food and stuff like that. But yeah, I've seen a lot of young people, especially at work and stuff, the way they eat and stuff, they're very, because of the information's out there, they're more knowledgeable in terms of food, but I feel they're still struggling how to deal with stress with their busy life and, and how to process their own emotions and feelings and stuff like that. I feel I'm not sure, is this something similar to in America or that you see? But in America, I remember when I went to America, the size is just crazy, and they really promote, like if you just you spend extra few dollars, you get the extra package, like like double. So really promoting for people to eat more and buy more. So yeah.
Well, and everyone is just go, 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 go. And I think that, like, from my experience traveling to Australia and to Europe, like, it's a lot less, or it's more about, let me rephrase that. So I would say it's more about how you spend your time versus how much money you make. That's at least the vibe I've gotten from the time that I've spent there. And like, I was lucky enough that my cousin lives in Sydney, so I got to go like stay with her for a couple weeks and like live as an Aussie. So that was the vibe I got. But since everyone's just go, 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 it's challenging. I think it comes down to being really intentional. And so, like, I spent the last 6 months working with busy CEOs and business owners who like felt like I don't have another moment in the day. But I think what people don't realize is if you are more intentional about taking care of your hydration, your sleep, your stress, your nutrition, you are a more productive human. And so like what I would do is like, I would have these people who are telling me like, I'm working 14-hour days. And I'm like, cool, walk me through the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep on a daily basis. And we map it out. And like, so this is where it comes down to like, it's really great if you can get a coach or get someone to help you, or just even accountability partner. And I'd be like, okay, cool. Now I have your whole schedule and here's the things that we want to fit in. And I would write them a schedule, like minute by minute, from the moment that they wake up till they go to sleep. And it's amazing how you can fit things in, and it's all relevant, right? Like one example I would provide to them is like, okay, when I went back and did my master's program, I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I was working full time and going to school, which was like 20 to 40 hours a week of work. And it was actually funny because when I got out of that, I was like, I'm going to have so much time to do so many things. Like, look at how much I was able to fit into my day. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm not in school and I'm so busy. And like, where did those 20 hours go? And so it's like, we make time for the things that we feel like we have to. And when it comes to health and nutrition, when you start implementing those things consistently enough, which you've already alluded to, is like, once you know how good you feel when you're doing those things, it becomes easier for it to be habit. But it is challenging, and it is hard to fit all the things in, but I don't know, you have to figure out how to schedule it. Because if it's not, written down, if it's not in your calendar, it's probably not going to happen. And I would say definitely, like, especially with me, like transitioning from like a very regimented schedule to mostly working from home, teaching some classes in person, like I need a I need a routine, or I can't stick with those things, even though that's literally my job, is to teach people how to do nutrition and fitness and stuff. It's even the most knowledgeable in their fields are, in the field are going to struggle if you don't, commit and be intentional about it. You can't just wing it.
Yeah. I love it. I love how you bring intentional, because that's how I feel I was with my life before. So busy, always so many things to do, but then you're actually getting nowhere. And that's how when cancer, aggressive type and stuff like that, thinking about death, you feel like, oh, you actually haven't actually living intentional enough, knowing what type of what version of me that will make me happy, because it's so much information nowadays throwing at you, and people can connect it to you. So yes, when you don't have a clear goal, when you don't have a clear intention, who you want to become, what you want to be, what makes you happy, all those things, everything seems to be important, right? But when you have a clear intentional, what is the right thing for you, it's so easy to say no, because now you have a clear direction where you want to go, and you're like, okay, this is out of my directions, not so. But when you don't have that clarity or intentional where you want to go, what you want to achieve, it's so easy to pull in all these, and because you don't know what is distraction, what is in line with your direction, until you have that intention. And I did it with my kids as well. What would be what makes you happy about yourself? What would be a great, like my son's name, Isaac, what would a great Isaac would be proud of himself? What kind of person or characters he want to achieve? And when he clear about that, he will know is picking up game is in line with that goal, or doing study or reading or playing outside and stuff in line. So it's just in terms of a sense of compass, which directions to go. It's so much easier to take actions, and your actions become easier and more stick because of you are clear which direction you are going. And like you said, you cannot with nowadays with all these busy convenience distractions, so much distraction, you need to have a plan, you need to have a roadmap for you to achieve and go. So without you having that mapping beforehand, it's so easy to fail and get you out of your direction, because I feel like we're in a world of distractions, and everywhere it's just always demanding, whether with your friend, the time, or you just have to know where you're going.
Yeah, I would say for the digestible piece that your listeners can take away is I mentioned, okay, on Saturdays before I go grocery shopping, I'm planning my food. I'm maybe plugging it into an app. I'm trying to see if I'm in the realm of my calories and my protein and stuff, and I can kind of diverge from that a little bit, but at least I have a baseline. But also looking, usually a lot of things about your week going into it. So can you map out how do I not go into my week in chaos? Am I going to have when would it make sense to put my laundry away? When which days? Look at your schedule, look at your kids' schedule, look at your spouse's schedule. When can I fit in exercise, or when can I fit in just some time for me? And just plan all of those pieces out, and know that it's not going to go off perfectly, but because things come up, your friend is like, hey, do you want to go grab lunch? Cool. That's fine. How many of those events are there really? So if you at least have a clear plan going in, then it doesn't get completely, off the rails as you go throughout the week. And yeah, I just setting an idea up, even if it doesn't completely execute, is a really, really good start.
Yeah, definitely spot on, and agree with that as well, because like you said, if you plan to if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's you need to have that routine, and for me, I set up what is the exercise. Yes, it's so easy to pull out, but okay, 1 hour is, I'm happy with that. You just said your maximum that you're happy with. But if you're so busy, set up a minimum. that you will makes you happy as well, you know, because that's what I feel it build a character. It's how you show up on hard day, how you show up when, you know, you're almost impossible, but you still do it. So even though it's just 15 minutes, you still feel you didn't break your promise to yourself kind of thing. So even though you don't have time, just do it whatever time that you have. At least stick to your routine, and that's makes you I think it makes you feel good about your day, and also I feel like understanding your routine is very important. And some people, it's like, oh, I'm so busy, but if they spend time to write it down, like what they're doing every hour, they will know they can make time. Some stuff we can remove, like, you know, scrolling your phone, or just sometimes sitting relaxed doing nothing. But when we intentional about it, we can make the most a lot of the time, and we can squeeze in a lot of things that is intentional and benefit to our health and our mental health. Yeah, so for people that want to know what time they wasted on, just write down every 1 hour what they're doing right on their phone, like 8 o'clock what they do, 7 o'clock, like from the time they get up, every 1 hour, and they would know what sort of time they wasted on the most, and they can add a healthy routine into it. And I love how you bring it, because routine is very important, and that's how you're gonna get the result and everything. A lot of people are like, oh, you know, it's so much change, I can't do it. But they underestimate how bit by bit every day have a really big impact on and you feel it's not just about getting the result will follow, but it's the how you feel every day when you get all those little things done that is benefit for yourself or your family, that makes you feel good about yourself or happy. It's like you enjoying the process, you're happy with all this little thing, and you feel like you already achieved something every day already, the fact that you did what you mapped out to do.
Yeah, I love that. So one thing I've observed working with patients and clients is that when people feel like they can't do 100%, they do 0%. And so that is my biggest obstacle as a clinician, is to get people to get over that hurdle. So like, one thing that has worked well with my clients, and now of course they're working with me coaching, but this could work in like a journaling aspect of like an adherence rubric. So like I'll come up with, depending on the person, maybe it's 5 things, maybe it's 10 things, depending on how type A they are. And we say like, it might be like really simple things. Like I drank enough water. I got up every hour. I ate a vegetable, you know, like whatever the case may be. Or it might be really more detailed. Like I hit 150 grams of protein and got my 35 grams of fiber and worked out for 30 minutes. So whatever I meet people where they're at, as all of these things are going to add up over time, because I would even say over routine, I'd say consistency, because it might not look exactly the same every week, but as long as those things are happening, that's going to build those habits. So like, if they can make a rubric and say like, okay, each day I'm going to report to myself, out of 5, how many did I hit? And so if it's 5, cool, you write down a 5. If it's 3, then you have to explain to yourself why, or if you're working with a coach, like explain why you didn't get that, and try to figure out how you're going to navigate that moving forward. But the key part being move forward. You can't beat yourself over the things that already happened. I think that's another big piece that people, again, if they feel like they're not giving 100% and then it's 0, they're like, oh, well, I already messed up, so it doesn't matter anymore. I just won't work out the rest of the week, or I won't eat healthy the rest of the week. And that's not the way to approach it. Every single little thing matters over time.
Spot on. I feel there's a lot with my clients as well. If they set like 9 o'clock, they have to do a certain task, and obviously their schedule running tight, and they just give up completely. And let's just do it, even though it's just that less 10 minutes left. Just do for that 10 minutes, and you will still feel the same. Okay, the main thing is your routine still stick, and you still feel you still accomplish your day, even though it's just within that 10 minutes. And then it will remind you. Yeah, and then like me, exercise, it wasn't, because I wasn't really an exercise person before. You know, like before cancer, I wasn't a really good with my health. So how I did it is that I when I wake up, I just put on my sport gears straight away. So I feel like I already like I can't bail out. Like, you know, that is gonna be my next step. And then when you exercise like 1 hour long, you feel like I put on my podcast, the one that I really love. So I feel like you stack up with something bad and something that you like. So it's to remind me that exercise is a good experience. It's not just a draining process where you feel like you know, you hold on until your 1 hour is finished. You feel like, oh, I enjoying that within that 1 hour because I was listening to my podcast and stuff like that. And the same with my kids. Like when they were struggling with study, I was like, tell me 3 things that you can make this reading more fun. You know, how do you do this pack up more fun? There's always, when you try to find a way how to make it fun, you can find a way. You stack up with something, hobby, play the music, or she will put timer how she can pack up with every time that she pack up which faster and stuff like that. It's just you turn it into a fun at the same time, so you can get to enjoy the process and stack up with something that you enjoy. So I believe like it's all come down to intentional, like how can you make it enjoy the process. And I'm glad you brought up this. Yeah,
well, I mean, that said, like even like because like most people spend way too much time scrolling and stuff, and like sometimes I'm like, okay, fine, can you walk while you scroll? And like, yeah, I'd rather you be present in the moment and like enjoying being outside or whatever. But if that's going to just get you moving in the right direction, then that's helpful. And like I worked with a client recently who he started out by saying, he was adamant. He said, you are not getting me in a gym. I'm not working out longer than 15 minutes. But as soon as I got him, I was like, all right, I'm going to write you a 10-minute workout plan. And it was just him. And then he was like, all right, I like this. I feel good. Can we do 15? And like, we gradually like moved up to where it's like, all of a sudden I'm like, now we're doing 45 minutes and you have a gym membership. Like, how did we get here? It's amazing. It's totally body in motion will stay in motion. And all, again, like as you said, like as soon as you start doing the right things and you see really how you feel, then it becomes a non-negotiable. But also being understanding and forgiving of yourself when things do go awry, because life happens. And when life happens, then what can you do if you can at least drink the water? Like everyone can drink water even when you're stressed out, right? Do anything, something, just keep the ball rolling, and that will help keep things on track.
Yeah, definitely. And the key is getting started. Like, you know, with my kids, when I teach them with the chores and everything around the house, I purposely put it super easy, and then they call it like they done it. So make it fun for them. So, and then I start increasing bit by bit. But when they get to accept that, okay, that's my responsibility now to put my clothes back or hang the clothes, something like that, I make it purposely at the beginning. It's super easy. And there's like, oh, I help mommy doing this. But then when they start to accept that's my responsibility, you start adding the chore. But then by then they already accept their normal routine. So the core, when you try to break the habit or change something, you have to make it easy for you to start first, as if you were doing it. And maybe, you know, after a week, you add a little bit more. They don't feel it because they mentally prepare for that chores or that time, and they accept it easily. Then at the beginning, I used to teach my kids and you give them a big homework and they scared from doing homeworks, right? But if you give a super easy question and you increase just 1 or 2 questions, and it's like, okay, now study time. They look forward to do it because they think it's quick and easy. But then as they get into accepting that, and then we can add it later, but now they already accepted this part of their routine. So yeah.
Love that. Easy wins.
Yeah, move on, go on for more of this. But I just want to ask a little bit more questions on your background. You know, when people facing challenges, especially, you know, with metabolic disorder and autoimmunity, chronic inflammations, what is the first thing that you help them to overcome that?
I would say it totally depends on what the condition is, but my number one starting place is always that back to basics of like, are we getting adequate nutrients? Are we getting adequate fiber? Are we getting adequate protein? And I think that applies to everyone. And like, that's like the one like statement I would say about nutrition, where everything else becomes really nuanced and dependent on the condition. So with metabolic disorders, they are reversible typically, unless we're talking like type 1 diabetes. But there's such a domino effect of all the systems impacting each other, it becomes really, really challenging. So typically, along with metabolic dysfunction, it's usually being overweight or obese. And I think that people don't realize, like, it's not just a matter of like, oh, eat less. They have all these different mechanisms now that are occurring that are working against them. So for example, if you have increased fats in your fat cells, because what our fat cells do is they shrink and expand. We're not changing the number of fat cells in adulthood. But when they are expanded because they have additional fats inside of them, we have more cytokines being produced, which produce inflammation. We have an increased amount of leptin, which is a hormone to tell your brain that you are satiated, being produced. Which we become resistant to, just like insulin resistance, where we're not able to process our blood glucose. And then we also have reduced production of a hormone called adiponectin, which is anti-inflammatory and helps with insulin resistance. So like already right there, like now you're not feeling satiated, you have increased inflammation, you're not having as good as insulin sensitivity. So you might be craving more carbohydrates because you're not being able to get those into your cells. I mean, that's already right there, just a vicious cycle. So I try to come up with strategies that can help support that multifaceted. I really like nutritional supports for that, like, getting 10 to 15 grams of protein, 15 to 30 minutes before each meal, like through a protein shake, like whey protein, is really, really instrumental in something like that. And that's really easy. And it's one of those things that's like, cool, protein's good for you anyways, you're going to benefit regardless. So that's where I start there. And typically with metabolic dysfunction, a lot of times I have had a lot of patients that it's just like, it is just, hey, let's add 1 leafy green salad per day. And like, that's where we're starting and moving towards how they feel. And I really, again, the food mood journal is really beneficial there so that they can see like, hey, I feel a lot better when I'm consuming those. That being said, when you make small changes, sometimes we see smaller results, maybe not as motivating. So I do have some clientele that I'm like, hey, let's go hardcore and do a true ketogenic diet for 3 weeks, and then let's transition into a Mediterranean diet and something that's more sustainable. So sometimes they need that, like, to jump over that hurdle and like see big progress so that they can be motivated to move forward. With autoimmunity, it's really tricky because every patient is so different and they respond to different things. Like with my condition, living with Crohn's disease, I have to be on medication, and diet and lifestyle for sure supports me, but I will die if I go off of my medication. Whereas there's some people with Crohn's disease that they just give up gluten and they live a totally normal life and they're not on any medication. And then there's other people who end up having to have part of their colon resected. So it's a really broad spectrum. So what becomes the challenge with autoimmunity is like maintaining expectations. So telling people like, we're not going to reverse your condition. We're going to find ways to manage the condition, mostly through making sure they're sleeping and that they're not stressed out, which is challenging, especially when you start to become symptomatic. Then that becomes a stressor in itself. But like there's particular dietary things that are going to come into play at different times because the immune system is so complex and we have different, what we call levels of tolerance. So And I have to encourage them, like, just because we have to do this restrictive thing right now doesn't mean that that's permanent. So I think it becomes more of like a mind body thing, like, and just like managing the psychological aspect of it, which I can say like as you have made your passion your purpose through your experience with cancer, I would say I would resonate in the same way with my autoimmunity, is my ability to work with people and understand how frustrating it is that like this is never going away, and like I understand how it is to manage a chronic condition and how it's like these ebbs and flows, and it's kind of a roller coaster. So that's been my experience with autoimmunity. It just looks so different for every person, and just to be like, I need you to be patient and I need you to trust me. It is hard. And then with chronic inflammation, that's tightly tied to both the metabolic disorders and the autoimmunity. And I think that doing things that like making sure, like if you are overweight, to try your best to be in a calorie deficit and get weight off, that's huge, because the additional fats in your cells producing the cytokines, like that's we know is an aspect. Getting to make sure that you're getting adequate nutrients, key. We want to make sure our mitochondria are functioning. We want to make sure that we're getting all those polyphenols and all those different types of fibers. I know I sound like a broken record, but like those are like the fundamental things, and all of those are going to play into your endocrine or your hormone function as well. Just realizing how they're all interconnected, but and the strategies that support one are also going to support the other. So that's what's really nice about it, instead of like trying to target like a specific supplement or something like that. A lot of people are doing. Unfortunately, in the functional medicine space, I found that a lot of people have kind of moved towards replacing drugs with supplements instead of getting back down to those root causes. So that's my mission, is to kind of stick to those back to basic principles.
Thank you. That's beautiful for that. Do you have patients that are in their teen as well? Like, because I have friends that, he just, 12, 13 and experienced autoimmune disease, lost his hand, stuff like that. So I just want to understand, why does it happen to a child? Like, because I used to read an article where autoimmune disease is linked to emotional suppressions, stress and stuff, but how true is that? Like,
Okay, so in my professional experience and from all my mentors that I've had, like what I have observed is that it seems like a lot for most people, there's like a never better since moment, where there was either a huge stressor that occurred, whether that be something like a divorce, a car accident, something big, or like an illness. Like in my case, I got stomach virus, and then that was like, it was just the perfect storm. But what's happening is we have, so two of the many different immune cells we have are called B cells and T cells. They are not supposed to recognize our own tissue, and typically they would get destroyed before they are out in your body. But in the case of autoimmunity, we have a B cell and a T cell escape what we call tolerance, and like they get out. They both recognize the same tissue, and you have some sort of stressor maybe that happens at the same time. And so like this can cause what we call a bystander effect, or we can have an incident where there's molecular mimicry, where we have a molecule that has a similar, like maybe amino acid sequence for the protein that we have to our own tissue. And then it's really complex, and I don't think we fully understand it. But in that situation, you might start producing antibodies for your own tissues, and it looks different in different patients. It's very complex. I think certain autoimmune conditions tend to show up earlier versus later. But again, I think it's just the perfect storm of stuff that happens. And I don't think we really understand it fully, because it's not like in research, like sure, like we have like specific studies on specific autoimmune conditions, but when we look in the field of medicine, there aren't like autoimmune doctors, right? Like, so it depends on, like, maybe you see a rheumatologist and they're more typically seen for somebody who has like arthritis or lupus. But like if you have inflammatory bowel disease, like I do, I see a GI doctor. So like it's not autoimmunity specifically that they study. While I do think it's becoming more prevalent that we have practitioners that are more educated on the pathogenesis or how we get these conditions. But right now it's still like, I don't know, it's just kind of vast. Like if you have Hashimoto's disease, you're seeing an endocrinologist. If you have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, you're seeing a gastrointestinal specialist. Like there should be kind of an umbrella of medicine, and maybe this will eventually occur where it is specifically autoimmunity, so we can better understand that, and then have people not only working with the patients but also working in the laboratory to try to identify those things. But because even the causes for different people for the same condition are different, it just becomes really, really challenging.
And for, let's just say, if a kids that teen come and see you that diagnosed with autoimmune disease, you will start with checking with the way they eat and their stress, their eating, their like the basic. Is there any test would you recommend them to do usually so you can collect more data from?
Sorry, what was the question? It cut out for
Is there any blood test that you would recommend them to do so you can collect a bit more data from? Because I remember my friend who her son diagnosed with autoimmune disease, and there's not much where she feel like she have to send some information to America, because in Australia there's no expert on that area. I feel like this, so I just want to know, is there any blood test that you would recommend for them to do in order to have more data and how to tackle it better?
That's a really good question. And so I'll speak from my own experience. Now, I was diagnosed via colonoscopy and biopsy, and then prior to actually starting a pharmaceutical therapy, I ended up running this fancy testing that is very expensive and most people probably would not want to pursue, and most of my patients would never pay for this. I was just desperate. And I tested for all my auto antibodies, so antibodies that I could potentially make for my own tissues. And I actually didn't test positive for the ones for Crohn's disease, ironically, but antibodies go up and down and you kind of have to catch them. So like sometimes when I've worked with someone that I suspected had like Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune hypothyroid disease, I will run their labs like every few weeks until I catch them high, because everything is so complex, which isn't realistic for everybody. So like that is the better testing. But like from my experience, when I did that testing, I tested high positive for the antibodies associated with multiple sclerosis, and I tested high for liver autoimmunity, which I'm not. Now I just know that could be looming, and I have to manage my stress even better. And that doesn't really change anything. If I know I have autoimmunity, I'm managing my stress, I'm exercising, I'm eating healthy, I'm making sure that I'm sleeping. It didn't really, like, I got this information, I'm like, now what? Like, why did I do that? And so like the problem is like that I'm guessing what happened with your friend's child is like there are some markers that are not specific to one autoimmune condition, and that's where it gets like really confusing and convoluted. And there is something to be said about like having a specific diagnosis and being able to say like, okay, we know that these specific studies were done on this specific condition and these specific medications, like, because like even like with Crohn's disease, which is an inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis is also inflammatory bowel disease, but the treatments are not the same for the two conditions. So like I know that there is benefit to like being able to sometimes identify that to inform treatment or supplements or whatever. But the overall big picture is doing the lifestyle pieces. I mean, I don't know at this point, like, I guess it depends on the person. Like, I wish I didn't do that testing that I did. I got out of it, I was like, oh, okay, I don't like that. And now I live with that in my head. Like, am I going to get multiple sclerosis? Like, some people, it makes me feel like, okay, I'm going to be even more intentional, but I was already a person that was being intentional anyways, and I already had this other diagnosis. So there are the antibody testing, which can give a false negative. I like to run markers to manage inflammation. Like, so CRP, C-reactive protein, is commonly ran if you are suspected of having autoimmunity, but not everyone elevates to CRP. I'm one of those people that doesn't elevate to CRP. We have to run other markers in addition to that. We can run a complete blood count and look at white blood cells and things like that. But I don't know that it really informs treatment. And that's usually, I tend to be a minimalist in terms of testing as well, as just like, is it going to change my approach to that particular person? But I think where I usually start with autoimmunity is if the patient or client is willing to do an elimination diet for a period of time, kind of let things reset and then reintroduce things, because those some foods can trigger different types of autoimmunity. And then as I mentioned before, like, it doesn't mean it's permanent. it could be temporary, but to just explore those factors. But I don't know that like additional testing is always going to be like a game changer in any respect, with the exception of some specific conditions.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for answering that. I think with the AI nowadays and I saw some advance in medicine field, they could detect cancer, they can help with cancer and stuff like that. Just for you looking ahead, for the development in functional medicine, nutrition, anything excited you the most for the future, like, for your patients' care or educations wise? Is there any hope, especially any hope for autoimmunes or IgA or anything with all this advanced technology, or anything that you can see or, potential?
I could speak on my specific condition and the research they've been doing there, but I actually won't go there because I would like to speak more broadly on everyone and whatever chronic condition someone might be struggling with. And that is the research on the microbiome. So I worked in a biochemistry research lab before I became a teacher. And my research was actually focused on this methanogenic bacteria. So they produced methane in the rumen of cows. And they actually, everyone always thinks of them farting, but it's actually them burping. And that contributes to the greenhouse gases. But methane can also be used to heat homes. So if we can find ways to activate these pathways and trap that gas, we can use that to heat homes. We can also inhibit these pathways and produce less greenhouse gases. And one of my first assignments before I started actually doing my lab work was to look at the research that was citing my mentor's lab. And there was all this emerging stuff with the human microbiome, because we have methanogenic bacteria too. And I like presented this to her and I was like, this is so cool. Why don't we do this? And she was like, nah. And then flash forward now, their lab, I think, has moved towards more of that. But that was really, really novel. Like that was not commonly studied. And like, I think that, gosh, yeah, it's just been over the last like probably 15 years that really people started talking about this topic, and we're learning more and more and more, and it's really exciting. And like almost every single chronic condition has been linked to some sort of dysbiosis, or that level of having potentially pathogenic bacteria in larger amounts than our good bacteria. And I think I think we're going to see a lot of improvements in health as we learn more about that. And that's something that we can do really easily from a nutritional perspective, for all the things that I've already mentioned. So I think that is enormous. And I think that we're going to, I don't know, just continue to do research to figure out ways to reverse damage to the microbiome or to help improve it. And I think that the general public is interested in this. Like, it's very cool. Like we're made up of more microbe cells than we are human cells. That's wild. Like, so you know that they play a big role in our health and our inflammation. And when we improve the numbers of those good bacteria, they're producing short chain fatty acids, which are interacting with our fat cells, which are anti-inflammatory. And it's really incredible.
That's beautiful. Yes, I do heard a lot of when people talk about the microbiome and the mitochondria and all this stuff, and I'm looking forward to learn more about that. And just because you have 13 years of experience as a teacher, and you're also a professor teaching as well. Because I'm fascinated on parenting, so I just want to know, when you're dealing with a lot of kids, what type of what is the comments that you see the kids struggle nowadays between the kids that thrive and the kids that, they have potential, but maybe what type of kids they're not thriving, what type of kids is thriving, that you see the comment that maybe that you can share for the parents to pay attention on, or maybe teen that watching this, they can, oh, that's my problems, and then maybe they can help them to what to focus on into the thriving part.
Well, this is multifaceted because, well, for one, in my experience, I worked for a long time in lower socioeconomic areas because that's what my contract was for in terms of my scholarship. And so some of them are just solely relying on the schools to feed them, like, to be quite frank, like they're like maybe like not even getting meals at home. I definitely had students that were experiencing that, and I know that's not the general consensus, but that's a battle. Like, and a lot of even kids that have the resources, a lot of I think it's pretty common for teenagers to tell me like, I don't know, I don't really eat. Like, they just go throughout their whole day. I think about my own experience in high school. Like, I don't know, I probably had like a Diet Coke for lunch, and like I don't even know what I was eating all day because I wouldn't bring lunch, and my mom wouldn't let me buy lunch. I don't know what I was doing. So just being like perpetually underfueled is a problem. And then, I mean, they think that they are indestructible and nothing can touch them, and so they don't care about healthy foods. Like, rarely do I ever find a teenager or adolescent that is like really interested in eating healthy. Like, that's pretty uncommon. But like, what I can say is, like, from the scientific literature, I like to always bring in things that are going to be relevant to that population, right? So I'm teaching at the community college, they're 18, 19, 20 usually, and then obviously high school, 13 to 18. And I would show them this research, and there was like even studies where they had a group of teenagers go on a Mediterranean diet, not Mediterranean food, but like the style of like lean meats, lots of legumes and fruits and vegetables and whole grains, just for 2 weeks, and have enormous changes to their anxiety and depression. 2 weeks, that's nothing. There's studies where they've used like a high dose of fish oil, and it does have to be good quality, so I want to just say that for your listeners. We can talk about that another time, but just the addition of those omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory, seeing after 6 to 8 weeks that we're seeing these huge changes again in anxiety and depression, which is something that we know that our youth definitely struggle with. And not to say like, oh, supplementing is the answer. The point is like eating a diet that's more anti-inflammatory. They were specifically using a supplement, but I would say doing a diet that contains the omega-3 fatty acids in addition to all of those whole grains and everything would be the answer. And that's, I don't know. Again, you said that in Australia, it seems like people, like the younger population is a little bit more mindful about food. I have students sitting in my nutrition class eating Cheetos and Takis. So they're not necessarily doing the right things, but like I think that, they're probably, with all this snacking and stuff, really causing a detriment to their blood sugar and their sleep and everything too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Because like for me, since I'm going through my own cancer, I realized how food plays a big part, like, with your health. So I try to educate my kids very early because I didn't have that knowledge when I was young. So I thought food is just whatever you put in, you have energy from it. Yes, you do have energy, but it's like a good like nutrition into your body. So now every time we always playing game, like, is fish good for your brain? Is what is lollies good for your brain? And they will answer just to keep throwing all this information. So when they pull out to eat sweet or something like that, they still eat it, but they are more conscious the fact that you keep talking about food and stuff more often. So I'm curious now, like, is there anything that you introduce to your kids about food, nutrition, around at this age, in order to, like, in terms of for them to have an education's knowledge on food? Is there anything that you talk to them more regularly, for your kids to understand a bit better about the food that they put it into our body?
Yeah, and I love that you said that you're framing it around like what is good for your brain, or what is, what's going to be good for your muscles, and not talking about good food versus bad food, and just talking about how these things impact us. And honestly, in my household, like the treats, I'm like, that's not food. Those are not things that contain nutrients. I talk about fiber, I talk about protein, and I hear them echoing me. They're like, oh yeah, we gotta get our protein first, and then we can do that, But I kind of make sure that I'm not framing things in a way that it seems like this is a punishment. Like, you have to eat broccoli and then you can have dessert. Like, it's not a consequence and a reward. It's just like, we nourish our bodies first. This isn't going to nourish our bodies, and then we can address those things. I typically am not in the school of thought of like, oh, just put it on their plate every day, the vegetables or fruit or whatever. I require, like, you are going to choose something green. It could be broccoli, asparagus, it could be avocado, it could be edamame. They're going to eat something green before they have whatever else they're having. So, and I mean, I guess I'm a little embarrassed to say this as a nutritionist, but like, my kids eat chicken nuggets and corn dogs and stuff, and I thought that they never would, but anybody who's a parent knows that it's really challenging. So like, my kids are not eating perfect. They're eating probably not so great, but better than most, because I'm like, hey, we are going to implement these things. And then I just choose things like easy wins, like the snacks that are in my house. Like, I may have some sort of like granola bars or something, which I don't typically consider very healthy, but like there's lots of fruit There's lots of different types of nuts, and if they want a snack, they're going to eat that, or they're not going to eat at all. And we reserve things like ice cream we don't have a container in the freezer. If we really want ice cream, and this goes for adults too, then drive down and get your scoop of ice cream. Don't keep it in the house, because now you're going to consume a heck of a lot more of it. And just because they're kids doesn't mean that they need to be having those treats. Like, we're teaching them the habits that they're going to live with for the rest of their life. And I think that, we've all experienced, well, I knew growing up, I got to have dessert after like every meal, and that was just because we were kids. I also was in the realm of like finish everything on your plate, which was like the worst thing that ever happened to me. Like, trying to unlearn that you don't need to eat every single thing on your plate. We're establishing what they're going to do in adulthood, and we need to keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, and yeah, because I believe in teaching the kids as early as possible so they have knowledge about it. Like, I love, like, you share about the analogies, like our body's like a car, what are you can you put water into your car tank, or you choose a good petrol? So keep educating, and they will just like, mommy, I already have my protein, can I have my snacks now? And and it's like if you want to make it easier for you, it's better off to have less snacks, have a healthy snack at home lying around, so it's harder for them to ask if they don't see all the lollies lying everywhere, and it's easy to control. And yeah, and also I just love to know, like, regarding to your student, is there any certain characters that you see in, like, for kids that are thriving or kids that are not thriving? What type of characters that you notice that maybe, I just want to know, because you deal with a lot of teen, and they're probably coming, because for me, growing up around high school or getting to uni, I didn't have a clear what path I want to be or where I want to go. Like, do you notice anything different between the kids that know what they want in life and kids that doesn't know what they want to do in life? Is there something that you notice, and maybe is there anything that you can share that could help young kids that they can pay attention to, so they have a clearer future where they want to go, and like a sense of purpose or meaning in their life, kind of thing? Only if you see any. I'm more curious on that.
I'm actually my answer to this will kind of go in a slightly different direction than I think what you were looking for. What I really emphasize to my students is that it's okay if they don't know what they're going to be doing, as long as they're moving somewhere, right? Like, if that means that they're just sitting on their parents' couch and they're not going to go to school, they're not going to do anything because they don't know what they want to do, that could be problematic. Although, like, sometimes they do need a break and they need that time, as long as they can get back on the right path. But I know that I felt so much pressure to know exactly what I was going to do. And then I flash forward, I'm like, okay, like, I remember I was in middle school and I was like printing out college applications. I'm like trying to like figure everything out. And in high school, I felt so much pressure, and throughout college, and like, often people would say to me, life is not a race, Laura. It's not a race, like, relax. And I was fortunate enough to be able to somewhat listen to that, because I watched my grandmother, who was like total Stepford wife, didn't know how much money her husband made. She had her 5 kids, Irish Catholic family, ends up getting divorced, goes back to school, and like just completely reinvents herself and flash into the future. She gets her doctorate in her 70s. And to me, I was like, it's never too late. And my mother, she was a stay-at-home mom. My parents get divorced. She has to go back to work. She ends up getting her master's degree in her 50s. And so I always like didn't see like age as a barrier. And I think that that's really positive, and like we have the ability to keep reinventing ourselves. Like I had no idea what was going to happen when I got my degree in biochemistry. No clue that I was going to become a teacher. I had no idea that I would go back to school 11 years later and get my master's degree and then now have a PhD. Like I've completely reinvented myself, and that's okay. And like we don't have to know. It's continuously evolving. I think that having that understanding and that open mind is important. Although I would say there is a little bit of toxicity in today's culture with like social media, and like maybe I would say like I do have a handful of students that I don't think understand that like not everyone's going to become famous on Instagram, and they are going to have to work hard and do things to be successful. But yeah, so I know that's not really maybe the answer that you were looking for, but that's just my perception on that specific topic.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like I reinvent myself at later on, but my question was just wanna like, you know, because for me it was more of listening what the outside world is telling me than listen to my own gut instinct, and that's why it took me longer to find my own path, because you kind of know what you want to do, passion, but then it's like, oh, my mom not be happy if I study this, or my friends all doing this. So in a way, I just want to know, is there any other kids out there that going through the same, you know, like to remind them to listen to your own inner compass, that which is it's easier to have clarity in your life, and that's why I just want to ask that question. It's never too late for anything. Like we keep evolving and growing until our last breath, and this is why I told my kids, you know, even though you make mistake, it's not end of the world, because our life is keep growing, evolving. You just collect it as a data, and you know, use this data for the next chapter of your life to come up with something that's right for you. You know, I know we can go on for a little bit more on this, but since our time is limited, I'm going to go into our last questions, where I ask all my podcast guests these same questions. Like, if you can leave one piece of advice for our generation or the younger generation, what would that be, and why is that?
So you shared this question with me previously, so I had some time to think on it, and the first thing that came to mind, if anyone is listening from the States, is that there are two things in life that you can spend money on that make you richer, and that is education and travel. And I say to the States specifically because I know how much more Australia and other countries really want people to travel and get the education and everything, and it's a little bit less of a hurdle. But I think that even though I had to pull out student loans, and I even used student loans to travel early on in my career, those things were pivotal, and no one could ever take those experiences or that knowledge away from me. So now to like everyone else, I've often like been in like a taxi or an Uber, and people will say, as a nutritionist, what is your number one piece of advice? And this is gonna sound, you know, like a lot of things, but because functional medicine at its root is looking at the whole person and all of the things, so I would say that you should eat the rainbow, get enough protein, get enough fiber, surround yourself with people that make you want to be a better person, find something to believe in, get enough sleep, and move your body. Like, and even if you can't do all of those things every day, do some of them, any of them, as consistently as possible. I think that when we are taking care of ourselves and we're feeling good, we're better able to serve our purpose and serve our calling, and steward our life to everybody that we love, and God, and whatever you believe in. And I know that as I've worked with people over the years, like especially when they think they don't have enough time to make for themselves, they realize how much more time they have when they actually do take care of those things.
Definitely. I truly believe in that, like, because for me, from my own experience, I used to not so much taking care of myself. I thought, just taking care, saving the energy, taking care of people around you. But then you're running from a draining and exhaustion's energy, and you realize that when you take care of yourself and become your best version, you actually can give out more. So it's not selfish. It's not selfish to take care of yourself and find things that can make you become your best version, because that's where you see, how come this person has so much energy to do things? How come I'm always draining every day? Because when you become your best version, you have more to offer. You can give out more, and that's where all your energy and stuff come from as well. So take care of yourself and let others receive from your overflow. Definitely. I really enjoy the time we chat together. I can't believe it's like 2 hours already gone. And we'll definitely have you back to share, because I think I would love to dive deeper on perimenopause and menopause. I feel like we haven't been, as a woman, there's not much information shared about this, and it seems to be people don't think it's real, but I feel it, like, with our hormone and stuff, it's really impact our lifestyle. And so well, guys, if you love this episode and you want Dr. Laura to come back and share more of her insights and wisdom, please comment on the channel. And thank you so much, Dr. Laura Roy. I really, really enjoy our time together. Is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap up these sessions?
No, that was so much fun. I appreciate you having me on and letting me speak to your audience.
Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to the Wisdom Inside Out. Stay tuned. Please follow me on this social media platform.